Yes, I like my last name, but it's a long last name, so it took some time to get used to. But I wouldn't change it for anything. Yes. I wish there were a different way to think about the threats, but it's hard. Hopeful, joyful, doubtful, concerned, trying to stay aware, mindful. I believe in taking risks. I believe in fighting for what you believe in. I don't know if there's something absolute that I am constantly fighting or believing in, but perhaps the question of freedom is something that is more ever present these days. It seems to be on the cusp of something taken for granted. It's very disconcerting where people understand what that means for them. So I guess in some ways democracy and the fact that we exist in one, where I am here in New York, in the United States, in the West, some part of the West, it's worth believing in. Freedom. Freedom to create, to invent. Freedom. Freedom to love. All kinds of freedom. I'd say most of the time I do. I feel pretty free. I'm living a pretty exciting free life most of the time. And then sometimes I do experience what I think maybe people who have too much freedom sometimes experience, or those who don't know what to do with so much freedom, is that they put limits on themselves. They put barriers. They follow rules. A lot of freedom can be very scary. But then there are some things that I'm not so free about. But I'm certainly free to jaywalk. And I'm also free to form my own thoughts, to share them with others, to express them, to put them down, to write them, to publish them for posterity. I'm free to make any image that I please. I'm free to shock. I'm free to question. I'm free to oppose without there being too many dire consequences. I'm free to live anywhere in the world, free to travel. I'm free to learn anything that I want to. I'm free to speak out if I so desire in public. I'm free to sing wherever and whenever I like. I'm free to write, I'm free to organize, I'm free to take a photo or video. I have so many freedoms. I wish I could know more what I could do with it. Culture is a big part of identity, at least for me, and what I can observe in others. But I also think that identity goes beyond culture, but one tends to identify with groups of something, with a community. And that community can exist culturally, but it can also exist in other ways. Values, professionally, the roles we take on that go beyond cultures or professions. You identify as a daughter, as a mother, as a sibling, as a parent, as a granddaughter, as a sister. So I think that where the identity is perhaps strongest for me is the communities that I actively take part in. Communities of ideas, communities locally. How do we live our lives? How do we spend our time? In my case, people who talk obsessively about art and make it. And then there's this kind of identity that goes beyond cultures. You kind of dip in here and there. It's more of a nomadic identity. You don't belong to anyone or any group in particular. So is identity formed by culture, or does culture inform identity? Both. Can't decide. It's always changing identity. We add on new identities. I add on new identities. I discover identities I didn't know I had. Get rid of old identities. And culture is so complex. Sometimes certain cultural communities, they want you to identify with them, because that's how cultures survive, and that's important. It's important to pass on, transmit across generations. I feel strongly that identity is ever changing. I'm open to that flexibility. And I would like for others to also be open to that for themselves. And yet so many people are keen on pinpointing a certain identity to someone. It's easier. You don't actually get to know them. You can just assume that they belong to a certain group and you belong to a different group. And therein the problem lies. I vote. I believe in voting, no matter who the candidates are. Because if you don't vote, you don't participate. And if you don't participate, then decisions are made for you. And the increasing consciousness that at least the society I live in here in the United States is so driven by a hyper-capitalist way of life, and what that does to our decision-making on a day-to-day basis. I define myself politically as someone who wants to understand. It fluctuates, but I have a penchant for Francis Cabrel and Chavela Vargas, something that touches you really deep. For Cabrel, I'd say that L'encre de ses yeux. For Chavela is No soy de allí, no soy de allá, no tengo edad, ni porvenir. I think it's when I feel something, that I can't quite put a finger on, but it's causing me some pain, some nostalgia. It's helpful to sing on your own. And yeah.